following program on Other Derana 24 is classified MA. It is intended for adults and may be unsuitable for children under 17. It may contain crude, indecent language, explicit sexual activity, graphic violence, or political ideology. Viewer discretion is strictly advised. State of the Nation is an opinion-based program. The thoughts and opinions shared within this program are not intended to offend or disregard anyone's perspectives or beliefs. We aim to foster open dialogue, encourage critical thinking, and explore thought-provoking subjects. Recognizing the importance of diversity and inclusion, this program welcomes all viewpoints and cherishes the right to express them freely. This program also contains the opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Sri Lanka, a new version? Amidst high hopes and dreams, the National People's Power's victory represents several firsts: a shift in political sentiment, a demand for accountability, and a vision for progress. But questions linger. Can this new leadership blur the lines of the past, uniting to provide meaningful changes? Addressing the 10th Parliament, the President unveiled his vision for the future, a pledge for transparency, inclusivity, and a commitment to listening to the people's voices. For insights and analysis, tonight I will speak to Labour Minister Professor Anil Fernando, Opposition Parliamentarian from the Samagi Janabalawege, Dr. Harsha de Silva, National Organizer and current Opposition Parliamentarian from the Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna, Namal Rajapaksa, former Parliamentarian Dr. Nalaka Godahewa, and the Senior Academic Researcher from the University of Boston, Dr. Marina Zucker-Marques. Good evening, I'm Mahieash Johnney, and this is the State of the Nation. Hello. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the State of the Nation, the political program dedicated to providing you with the essential facts and diverse viewpoints necessary for making informed choices. Now, 2 weeks ago marked several significant milestones, particularly with the inauguration of the 10th Parliament. There's a lot to cover, so let's dive in. Well, Sri Lanka, with a population of around 22 million people, conducted parliamentary elections 2.5 weeks ago. Now, despite having over 17 million registered voters, the turnout was disappointing, with only about 11 million participating in the voting process. Now, this indicates that more than 6 million citizens chose not to vote, 2 million less from the presidential election, and over 500,000 ballots were rejected. Now, many felt that their votes would not make a difference, highlighting a concerning reality that threatens the integrity of our democracy. The unrest from previous events, particularly the regime change riots of 2022, serves as a clear warning of the consequences when the government disconnects from its citizens. Democracy flourishes only when people are actively involved. This recent election underscores the urgent need for our leaders to respond to the needs of the public. It is crucial for them not only hear, but genuinely listen to the concerns of the populace. Restoring trust in our democratic system requires prompt action that meets the daily needs of our citizens. Campaign promises must be transformed into tangible results. Commitments were made for improvement in the economy, education, business practices, and society as a whole, and they need to come to fruition in due course. Now that the people have fulfilled their part by achieving a 2/3 majority for this government, it is imperative for the leaders to take their responsibility seriously. However, this responsibility does not rest solely on the leaders. It is also on every citizen, you and I. We must advocate for active participation in our democracy, ensuring our collective voices are heard. Now, if our leaders stray from the right course, it is essential that we make our voices heard. Conversely, when they are performing well, we should also offer our support and encouragement. The vote is significant. Every vote, rather, is significant, and every opinion matters. The President emphasized this point during his policy statement in Parliament recently. Watch.
ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී සහ නිදහස සෑම පුරවැසියෙක්ම තමන් අදාන ආගම, තමන්ගේ භාෂාව, තමන්ගේ සංස්කෘතියෙන් අනුව හුදකලා වීමට ලක් විය යුතු නැහැ. තමන් අදාන ආගම තමන්ට අතිරේක පීඩාවක් ගෙන දෙනවායි කියලා හැඟීමක් ඇති විය යුතු නැහැ. තමන්ගේ සංස්කෘතිය තමන්ට අතිරේක පීඩාවක් දෙනවායි කියලා ඇති විය යුතු නැහැ. තමන් නියෝජනය කරන දේශපාලනේ තමන්ට අතිරේක පීඩාවක් ගෙන දෙනවායි කියලා හැඟීමක් ඇති විය යුතු නැහැ. දේශපාලනික වෙනස්කම් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මා කලින් කිව්වා වගේම එක් ජන කණ්ඩායමකට තම තමන්ගේ වූ අනන්‍යතාවයන් තියෙන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි නිදහස කියන එක අපි හැම දෙනාටම පොදු දෙයක්. ඒ නිසා හැම දෙනාටම බියෙන් සැකෙන් තොර ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදී නිදහස් රාජ්‍යයක් නිර්මාණය කිරීම අපේ වගකීම. ඒ වගකීම අපි ඉටු කරන බව ඔබට අපි සාතික කරනවා.
Well, to all members of the newly elected 10th Parliament, take heed of the lessons from the election. Fulfill your promises or be prepared to face the consequences. Let's insist on accountability, remain engaged and work towards rebuilding trust in our democracy as our future depends on it. We'll be right back. Hello everyone, welcome back to the State of the Nation. Now Thursday, the 21st of November, marked the ceremonial opening of the 10th Parliament, and President Anil Dissanayake laid out his government's vision for the next 5 years. Now with over 150 newcomers stepping into the Parliament, it's clear that people were craving for a change. They wanted fresh perspectives and a different approach to governance. They weren't expecting musical chairs, but apparently something different, something tangible. It's no secret that many of us have grown tired of how elected officials often act once they gain power. This time feels different though, so we think. With these new faces comes a wave of optimism, and there's a genuine hope that our leaders will finally get it right and guide the nation towards a brighter future. We felt this way back in 2019, but now it's 2024, and the current president seems really committed to making it happen. Well, let's get more reaction from the government, and for that, Labour Minister Professor Anil Fernando joins me via Zoom. Appreciate you coming on the show, sir. First of all, congratulations on the massive mandate by the people, and also congratulations on being appointed the Minister of Labour and as I also think as the Deputy Minister of Economic Development. Two major tasks at hand. Minister, so first things first, what is priority number one for your government this time around?
Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure joining your program. In fact, the number one priority is the stabilization. So mainly the macroeconomic stabilization, because the country, the state of the economy that prevails at the time where when the power is shifted was in a very critical condition, so that the far most the important thing and the number one priority was to stabilize the economy, because without stabilization we can't think of channeling the required funds, investments to real production economy. So that correctly we looked into different aspects of this stabilization, mainly the stabilization in the finance, and the stabilization in government revenue, that is the fiscal stabilization, and the external sector stabilization. In addition, those are the main economic stabilization. In addition, we paid attention on the social stabilization as well. To great extent now we have achieved these things, and that stabilization process is connected to IMF the agreement framework and the debt restructuring. So debt restructuring is almost nearing to completion, and probably we would be able to have the final exchange of bonds by the end of this year.
Absolutely. Minister, the economy is, of course, again going to be at the thick of things, and recovering and reviving the economy now falls to you and your government. As you mentioned, how quickly can people start to see changes to their daily lives? We know certain timelines were floated during the campaign, but all in all, honestly, what kind of time frame are we looking at?
So it's like this. In fact, so changes are happening as of now, may not be reflected in material terms, maybe in terms of revenue or in terms of any other things, but the change is happening. So however, just to be fair by everyone, like, so when we hear how it is reflected in the life, so whether the change has done something, of course, in terms of more income and the ease of the using your income to buy your basic things, in terms of your healthcare facilities, in terms of your education, and in terms of social and structural changes. These things are gradually changing, but within a couple of years' time, you can see a significant change, that the material change can be seen.
Absolutely. Now, there's another crucial conversation that I would like to have in length in terms of your main portfolio, Labour. Brain drain. How can this government ensure that we plug that hole and keep the best back here in our country?
Yes, it's like this. Our objective is not only to stop this the brain drain. The main objective is to develop a vibrant and highly effective human capital. So the human resource development is number one. So mainly it helps and works in two frontiers. So number one is, so with the human development, it really increases the production capacity, abilities and competencies of people to work more. But on the other hand, it really enhances the nature of human and the social evolution as well. So from these both fronts, it will help enhance our economy. However, there are critical issues in the hand as of now. The present production relations are not really healthy, and they are antagonistic hatreds. So therefore, it's not that easy to bring different forces of the production relations onto one front where everyone can think for a common purpose. So our objective, mainly with the help of the Ministry of Labour and the help of others as well, because our government, individual ministries do not work in isolation. Integration also matters, so that the final objective is to develop high quality, high caliber human resource that would really help energize the economy.
Indeed, one Minister of Labour and Deputy Minister of Economic Development, Professor Anil, Jayantha, Fernando, appreciate sir for your time. Now let's bring in State of the Nation contributor and former Minister Dr. Nalaka Godahewa to get some reactions. Thank you, Doctor, for joining me. once again this week as well. I've heard this same speech from various presidents before regarding the throne speech that was made by President Anukumara Dissanayake. Now, the areas of focus was pretty much the same, but the determination to change them is a bit different this time around in the backdrop of where Sri Lanka is right now. Economy, politics, IT, society, tourism, and even discipline was focused on by President Anukumara Dissanayake in his speech to the Parliament. What jumped out of the pages for you, Doctor, on this speech?
No, actually, when I was listening to President Anukumara Dissanayaka's speech, what came into my mind was President Godahewa Rajapaksa's inaugural parliamentary address in 2020, because the content were more or less the same. I mean, the big picture, the macro issues addressed were more or less the same, except one or two areas where there were slight differences. For example, when it came to the separatism issue or the racism, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa emphasized more on the singular Buddhist vote and the need to preserve the dignity of the rest of the races. So President Anukumara Dissanayake categorically said there's no difference between anybody. Everybody must be treated equally, and there's no room for any kind of racism in this country, which was a plus, I would say. I mean, under any circumstance, we should not differentiate between the races in this country, and we must give full marks to Anukumara Dissanayake, the current president. But apart from that, what was different? The importance of digitalization, the importance of getting people out of poverty, the education, IT sector, advantage of the geographical location, emphasis on the agriculture, the need to look after the poor and to make Sri Lanka a developed nation, more or less the same. So I didn't see much of a difference. I would have expected from a government which came to power with 2/3 majority, or rather even more, some radical changes to the current system, whereas instead of that, what we saw was a kind of a willingness to maintain the status quo. Okay, one thing that was different from Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the IMF issue, because when Gotabaya came to power, this issue was not there. Now there's one of the biggest issues the country is facing is the economy, and the former president Anil has started a certain program with the IMF, and instead of showing how the NPP government is going to be different, or rather negotiate with IMF, President Anukumara Dissanayake basically said, I'm going to maintain the status quo. I mean, that is not what they were promising before the election. So that was a little bit of a disappointment when I was listening to his address.
Indeed, Doctor, despite the determination by the president to change the economy and social changes, quite a less amount of attention was given to security. How, in the previous parliament which you were part of, security was one crucial area of focus. Why not now?
No, I think security will always be an issue for this country, because we haven't come out of the problems we were facing sometimes back. There's this separatism agenda is always there with at least some people, and also the religious issues that can come up, the religious camps. The world is still struggling with that, so you can't say Sri Lanka is now immune to that. So security will always be an issue. Sovereignty will always be an issue. The emphasis has to be there from any government. But in a way, I think the current government must be feeling that since they won even the North, for the first time the Southern Party has won the North, the support at an election, they must be feeling that there's total security and everything is now settled. But I would caution them not to think like that. The government must always pay emphasis to the security, because there are always unwarranted groups, extremist groups, which don't not fall in line with the rest of the thinking. Answer to your question, I think emphasis has to be there on security, whoever comes to power.
Doctor, now the president was very stern about making the parliament work for the people and more so creating faith among the electors towards the people. Discipline was one key factor he focused on. This is a new chapter in our nation's history. Do you think with so many new fresh faces coming in, finally, this is going to be a possibility?
I think the government has an opportunity that the previous government did not have. If you look at the history of Sri Lanka's parliament, from a highly dignified place where everybody looked up to, the quality deteriorated over time, particularly after the introduction of the preference voting system. The quality of the people who entered the parliament, not everybody, but some people, started deteriorating, and that was quite visible to the people, particularly after the parliament, the decision by the previous government, or rather the government before, to air the parliamentary proceedings to the public through mass media and social media. It became a kind of a show. People shouting, screaming, just to get attention in the evening news or during the live session, and the quality deteriorated heavily. And also, I would always think the previous speaker was not able to control the parliament properly. So it became a place that people don't want to, respect, don't want to listen. The quality deteriorated heavily. So now that there are so many newcomers in the parliament, more than 2/3 are freshers, yes, this government has an opportunity to change it. But of course, even the speaker is new, which is not necessarily a good thing, because I think, but he will learn. He's an educated person. The parliament must learn to respect the standing orders, respect the norms, the traditions, and set an example to the people of this country. And I sincerely hope the current parliament, the speaker and the parliament, will make an effort to do so. That is the ultimate place that everybody is looking up to in this country. So that dignity has to be maintained.
Absolutely, Doctor. With best wishes to the new parliament. Doctor, thank you for taking the time to speak to us. Of course, as this parliament progresses, our conversation will continue. Dr. Nalaka Godahewa, former parliamentarian and State of the Nation contributor. Thank you very much. Let's take a short commercial break. When we return, the reactions from the opposition itself. This is the State of the Nation. Back in a minute. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. During the inauguration of the 10th Parliament, a lot of focus was given about reviving the ailing economy. What we heard from President Anrukumara Dissanayake was nothing new. Many governments have tried to focus on the same areas. But what's the difference between the National People's Powers Policy and what is being done? Well, it remains to be seen. Let's get some reactions. Joining me now is opposition parliamentarian from the Samagi Janabalawege, Dr. Harsha de Silva. First things first, Doctor, congratulations on being re-elected to the 10th Parliament. What do you all expect to do in this new Parliament? The last one, we saw you all fought very vigorously for many key factors, especially in financial governance. What would be the key agenda this time around?
First of all, thanks to the congratulations, Mahieash. I mean, it was a very hard-fought win for us. I must thank the people of Colombo for actually increasing our preference percentage by some 90%. It goes to show that people actually appreciate our style of politics. Now, we are in the opposition and we have to play a strong opposition role. Because we have in numbers only 40 in our party, and together we have some 60 odd, and we have to face a gigantic government, both in front of us and behind us in the way we are seated in Parliament. So the big issue is going to be economic governance. How are we going to manage the difficult situation, the multiple challenges? So therefore, I expect to play a key role in agreeing with the government when they are right, and certainly vociferously disagreeing when they are wrong. Because I think it is critically important that we don't lose our way. Because if we do, we're going to be in serious trouble, not just in economics, but socially, politically, we are going to be in trouble. And we are going to support the government in their efforts to fight corruption. We will put both our hands up and we will do all we can to change the culture of impunity, of people being above the law, and so on. So therefore, on the one hand, fight for the right way in conducting economic affairs, and on the other hand, help the government fight corruption. So these are the two main things that we plan to do in Parliament.
Doctor, just going by the data, now back in 2020, the Samagi Janabalavegi, the SJB, was raised to be the nation's main opposition. Since then, in every election, you keep losing votes. Have you managed to do an inward examination to figure out as to what's not resonating with the masses that your party is suggesting or proposing?
Well, actually, the JVP, NPP had a very strong narrative, and that was based on the failure of all previous governments, and we just got caught up in that entire tsunami. So whether it is in the south, whether it is in the north, whether it is in the plantation areas, the traditional parties were not able to hold on to their votes. So therefore, it was across the board, not just for our party. But having said that, we need to have introspective and look at what really went wrong in our strategy. Why were we not able to appeal to the people? Did we understand the issues that the people were really worried about? Were we willing to change our position in sort of getting on the same page with what people's thinking was? So there is going to be a lot of inward examination, looking at what we have to change, the structure of the party for sure, how we are going to organize ourselves in the future, what is going to be the leadership structure. All these things will need to be looked at if we are to make a serious comeback and win the next election.
Absolutely. Doctor, now Sri Lanka's current path towards recovery still seems to have many hardships on the horizon, especially there's a tendency towards high taxation. The SJB made a promise to the people saying that you will be taking another look at the current IMF program. Now, what would have been the main changes that you would have suggested if you were in power? And more importantly, how can you make it happen in this new context?
You see, the funny thing is today in the president's policy statement, he mentioned that there can be no changes to the IMF agreement. You see, during the campaign, this was the main argument. You know, they went to the extent of saying they can even change the foundation of the IMF agreement, which is the debt sustainability analysis, which we said, no, it cannot be that. So there was actually a lot of miscommunication. Obviously, knowing that it couldn't be done, the government did promise to change. Now, you know, that's all in the past. What they are suggesting is, look, no changes can be done. But what we had planned was to make certain internal adjustments, particularly on the debt structure, to do what was right by the Employees' Provident Fund. And then on the taxes, we had planned to make certain amendments to the pay tax, some amendments to the corporate income tax, and so on. So therefore, if the government is willing to, perhaps they may look at it in the next budget to make certain changes within the parameters of the IMF agreement, we plan to consider those favorably. And if by any chance I chair the Committee on Public Finance, then I'll have a much more stronger and a more important role to play rather than being a mere MP. So let's see how it goes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's hope for the best. All right. I had to leave it at that. Dr. Harsha de Silva, opposition parliamentarian from the Samajana Balavagia. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mahieash.
Well, what happened to the mighty Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, the party that was given similar power by the people back in 2019? Its national organizer and parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa will join me after this break. This is the State of the Nation. Back in a moment. Welcome back, everyone, to the State of the Nation. Now, back in the parliamentary elections of 2020 and the presidential elections of 2019, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, at that time one of the youngest parties in our nation's history, managed to clinch political power with a supermajority. With the presidency and the House delivered by the people with ultimate power, the administration failed to do what they promised, despite so much of hope. Now, after the 2022 financial crisis, many in the party faced many challenges in going back to the people. And in the current election, as you all know, the people spoke, and they spoke very loudly, reducing what the once mighty Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna from 145 seats in the House to just 3 in the new government, in the 10th Parliament. Well, joining me now is the national organizer of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa. Thank you very much, Namal, for taking the time to joining me on the show. First of all, congratulations on being elected to our new parliament. Let's start off asking this very simple question. 145 seats to just 3 seats. Any hope for the SLPP in the future?
Thank you, Mahieash. I think politics is all about, this is what you need to face the public. End of the day, the people decide who they elect and who they are not going to be elected. And it's not only SLPP. If you look at in 1970, the Jayantha UMP faced a similar defeat. And then again 1977, including my father who lost Beliatta, SLFP at that time faced a similar defeat in the public. So eventually, every year, every election, there are changes that take place, and people, elect governments and individuals to represent them to the parliament. So I think what matters now for us as a political party is to restructure ourselves and move forward.
Namal, the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna in the past represented the nationalistic or patriotic camp of our country. Your father, President Mahieash Rajapaksa, was very much pivotal in creating such a place for Sri Lankans who wants to be more conservative and to keep fighting for national values. Now, in this previous election, this notion seems to have been thrown out by the voter. They threw it out back in 2015, but wanted it back in 2019 and again out in 2024. Do you think there's still a place for the patriotic or nationalistic people of this country in your party? Or has that changed, or are you hoping to change that at all?
Mahieash, we still believe in our core values and we will stand by it. And I think it's up to us as politicians to make sure that we stick to our values. People decide differently based on their needs and circumstances at that given particular time. But I think it is a responsibility of political parties to make sure that we stick to our values. but also have a modern approach, of course, a modern approach. And I believe why the nationalistic approach was defeated is by dividing us. And I think at the moment, if you look at post 2015, or ever since 2015, this nationalistic movement has always been divided. So as a result, that we have to face a defeat in face of public. So I think, one, we need to unite as a country and as a nationalistic movement. We can always work together by maintaining our core values, and also move forward as one unit. But at the same time, I believe we need to have a modern approach. Especially, we are going through economic crisis, and I don't know why certain political leaders at the moment trying to project themselves or their campaign or their government as a government trying to address racial issues, because there is no racial issue at the moment in the country. There may be certain isolated incidents which happen all over the world. It's not a unique thing to Sri Lanka, but the current crisis is based on economics. So I think the current president must concentrate on bringing back and normalizing the economy and moving forward. Moving forward and creating jobs for the youngsters, and make sure that he deliver what he promised during the campaign. But unfortunately, it seems to be they are more concentrating on reconciliation, or they're talking about the racial issues or how political parties can eradicate that. And it was eradicated in 2009, and the northern people got the right of voting ever since. And the first provincial council was held after the war was during my father's or President Rajapaksa's time. And ever since, there is no provincial council in North. So I think the nationalistic approach still has to be there. And I think my party, we will maintain that core value. And I must reiterate this: we are not racist. We are not racist, but we are nationalist, and we believe the culture should be preserved, the languages should be preserved, and as a country we all should live peacefully.
Understood. Now, Namal, only 3 seats. How can you make it work? How can you make your voice, the people who voted for you, heard in this 10th Parliament?
So I think the President Anil has proved that 3 seats in Parliament still can form a government, and not just a government with 2/3 majority. So it's just a number in Parliament, and we believe it's a shift. It's a shift of voter base to a different need. And if we as a party, maybe we make sure that we maintain our core values and we address the needs of the people, I'm sure the voter base will shift back to us during the next couple of years. But it's up to the party and us, not only 3 of us, but as a group, because we have probably one of the political parties in the country who has the strongest network, Mahieash. Our network is starting from Jaffna to Dondra. So we need to reactivate that and make sure that we engage with our party cadres and the public in coming years.
Indeed. Well, a lot more to discuss later on as this new parliament keeps moving ahead. National Organizer and Parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa, appreciate you talking to me, and thank you very much. A short break now, and when we return, Boston University has a new proposal to the IMF in how they can secure more funding to aid vulnerable nations. Stick around to find out. This is the State of the Nation. Back in. Welcome back everyone to the State of the Nation. And there's a new idea floated by the University of Boston proposing that the International Monetary Fund sell a portion of their gold reserves in order to raise the required funding to assist nations that are prone towards climate crisis in the future. Now, the International Monetary Fund holds around 90.5 million ounces of gold on its balance sheet, a legacy from its founding in 1944. when the member countries paid their quotas in gold. Now that gold still remains with the IMF. This idle gold is sitting on the IMF's balance sheet at a historical cost of around $45 per ounce compared to $2,600 per ounce on global markets. Meanwhile, the fund's Catastrophic Containment and Relief Trust, or the CCRT, which provides grants to eligible countries to help cover debt service repayment after a natural disaster, is in desperate need of replenishment and reforms. Currently, only 30 members qualify for CCRT access, while the cash balance hovers at approximately just around $103 million. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka is not part of that fund. But in consideration of the frequency of natural disasters, even right now, the whole of last week, Sri Lanka was getting battered by severe rain. That is very much impacting day-to-day lives of our people. We soon might be forced to seek help from this particular fund. Now, a new policy brief published by the Boston University Global Development Policy Center explores how CCRT access could be expanded and replenished using the proceeds of an IMF gold sale to meet the needs of climate-vulnerable developing countries, just like Sri Lanka. Let's now cross over to Boston, Massachusetts, and that's where we find Dr. Marina Zucker-Marques, who is the author of this paper. Dr. Zucker-Marques is the senior academic researcher at the Global Economic Governance Initiative at Boston University's Global Development Policy Center. Thank you very much, Doctor, for taking the time to join me. Now, how can you suggest that a private organization to sell their gold reserves?
This is a very good question, Mahieash. I think it's very important to clarify that the IMF, it's a public international organization. It has a mandate to provide a public good, which is financial stability, and help all its funding members, including Sri Lanka. So for context, it's public information, but very few people remember that the IMF has over 9 million ounces of gold in its balance sheet. It's a legacy from their creation in 1944, when its members paid the subscription using gold. So every IMF member, all the countries that can borrow from the IMF, they first need to pay a subscription. And earlier it was made in gold. We are suggesting the IMF to sell it gold because it's not the gold from a private institution, it's the gold from the membership for the countries that subscribed. So we're suggesting to make it a better use of these resources. Gold now are at a record price, and if the IMF were to sell its gold, they could profit over 200 billion. And this is, just for context, is twice their current lending. Now that countries are facing budgetary constraints, it's very important to think in better ways to use the resources of our, society. And our study did exactly this. So the IMF has a fund that is called Catastrophe Containment and Relief Fund, the CCRT. And this fund is aimed to give debt relief for countries with low income when they face natural disasters like hurricanes, health disasters like the COVID. So during the time when they face these disasters, the country can avoid paying back the IMF. Currently, there are 30 eligible countries that, during the COVID, they didn't need to pay the IMF back for 2 years. The problem is that now the CCRT is depleted. They only have 103 million, and this is not sufficient to cover not only one country if they need to access. So Madagascar, they are going to pay the IMF 106 million. So if only Madagascar needed the resources, they wouldn't be able to tap the resources. So our study showed that if the IMF were to sell only just 4% of their gold reserves, they could help 86 countries giving that relief. So our study is saying that we need to replenish the CCRT, and we think that gold is the best option.
All right, that makes sense in a way. Doctor, now, As of now, despite Sri Lanka is part of the IMF Emergency Fund Facility Program, we are not part of the Catastrophic Containment and Relief Funds, which is the CCRC. But with the current rate of natural disasters, even last week, that keeps happening here in this part of the world, Sri Lanka might need its assistance very soon. But in a situation like that, and as you explained that the funding is not there to expand two programs to more countries, how can the organization make way for such a request, as the trend seems to be very alarming?
Exactly. So climate disaster is becoming more frequent, and the IMF should provide tools to help all countries, not only those with low-income countries that could access the CCRT. Countries like Sri Lanka that are not part of the CCRT could be helped in case of natural disasters if the IMF were to introduce what we call debt pauses. So basically, if there is a health issue or, hurricane draws, the country could stop paying back the IMF for at least a period of time. We know that the CCRT is target for lower income countries like Malawi, Congo, Ethiopia, but other countries that are middle income countries like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Argentina, they also face natural disasters. If we were to use the gold to help these countries that are large economies like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Argentina, the IMF would need to sell up to 18% of the IMF gold, which could be seen as a very a higher level. But the IMF could establish debt pauses. This is a tendency that is already on the way. Multilateral development banks like the World Bank, they have what is called climate resilience debt clauses that basically allow countries to postpone payments in time of need. We suggest in our study that the IMF should also incorporate similar clauses in their lending practice.
Doctor, in a situation where, let's say, many other countries do become part of this is just going to increase more debt portfolio to their national GDP, meaning more debt for these nations. Do you think this is a feasible step to keep proceeding on this path?
Exactly. Mahieash, you're referring to what we called the vicious cycle of debt. So countries that are more prone to climate disasters are the ones paying the highest price, although they contributed very little to cause the problem that is climate change. They not only need to borrow more to reconstruct, to mitigate risk, but they also pay higher interest rate because their situation is seen by the markets as riskier. This is certainly not a sustainable path, and it requires a coordinated approach from the international community. The IMF must be part of this conversation, and it can be a leader in this regards. We believe that the first step is replenishing the CCRT using the gold, which is the reserve of the community and the international community, and also introducing debt pauses for helping countries, larger economies, including Sri Lanka.
Absolutely. All right, we have to leave it at that. Thank you very much, Dr. Marina Zucker-Marques, Senior Academic Researcher at the Global Economic Governance Initiative at Boston University. Appreciate it very much. A short break now. I'll be back with the closing. Well, in the wake of the recent general election, the voices of the people has echoed through the corridors of power. They have spoken volumes, laying down a clear message. Change is not just desired, it is in fact demanded. The people's will is resolute. They seek leaders who are committed to governance, not as an exclusive club, but as a collaborative effort. Leadership is not a privilege reserved for a few. It is a responsibility shared by all. But history reminds us that isolation breeds division. When the governing body distances itself from its citizens, like the previous regime, it creates an us versus them mentality. That's when the hope dims and the shadows of doubt returns. But this is not just about leaders. The path forward requires a partnership between the people and the leaders. The citizens are ready to help, but action must come from the leadership. The people are eager to join hands for progress, to invest in the future of Sri Lanka. When the people feel that they are part of the progress, they will rally through, even through tough times. It is a collective effort, a united front that can weather any storm. Sri Lanka is at a pivotal moment, a moment filled with potential. We can and we must. The people have spoken. Leaders, it's time to deliver. Sri Lanka can and Sri Lanka must. Well, with that, we wraps up this edition of State of the Nation. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll be back again next Sunday with another episode dissecting events of our nation, giving you views you can trust and opinions you cannot ignore. Thank you for joining. I'm Mahieash Johnney. Have a good day.
So when the fishes are frightening, I want to hear myself think again. I want to hear myself think again. So long I've been turning into the skin and waltzing away from the damage I did. I'd brush off my shoulders and tuck in my shirt and flee from the scene before I knew I'd been hurt. But I've been trying my best to conceive, to cease, to take, just receive. 'Cause there's more than your love that I need, that I need. Help me carry this weight that's dragging me down. Pull me out of the drink before I start to drown. Let the wreckage all sink to where the fishes are frightening. I wanna hear myself think again. Help me carry this weight that's dragging me down. Pull me out of the drink before I start to drown. Let the wreckage all sink to where the fishes are frightening. I wanna hear myself think again. I wanna hear myself think again.